What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It is Carter Scotland Allen here, and today we have Sam Raimi doing another superhero film with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Let's not waste any more time and get right into this movie review. Dr. Stephen Strange casts a forbidden spell that opens a portal to the multiverse. However, a threat emerges that may be too big for his team to handle. Okay, so we just read that synopsis, and honestly, if you've seen the film, you know that the synopsis does not really do the film justice. I also think the trailers showed a little bit too much, leading to fans expecting more and more from the film. There was tons of speculation, Deadpool, things like that, and, people came out disappointed. I was not one of those people. I had very mid expectations for this film, but let's not waste any more time. We are going to start with the directing. Okay, so for the directing of this film, once again, we have Sam Raimi back in the superhero genre, the superhero world. This is the first time since, 2007, 2008 or whatever, when Spider-Man 3 came out, and, that really didn't do that well. I loved it because I was a kid at the time. I still have fun with the film. Again, I know it's not perfect, but I do have fun with it. And it is so fantastic to have him back in this. I mean, superhero films are supposed to be quirky, in my opinion, or at least have some of their own visual style. And that's a common complaint with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is that it oftentimes looks very bland when it's based off of something so very colorful. And this film really took it up a notch in the visual aspect, and I think it really did things just how, like how Guardians of the Galaxy, I wasn't, super hyped for that film when it was first announced, and now it's, one of my favorites. Even though Eternals isn't one of my favorites, I still think visually the fact that that film looks so different makes that film more fun watch than some of the other Marvel Cinematic Universe feature films and or TV shows. So with the directing as a whole for this film, I thought Sam Raimi did a really good job, because he had to take over for Scott Derrickson, who wanted to make this film a full-on horror, which I would have loved. Obviously, Marvel wasn't going to let that happen. They didn't let it happen. I do think Sam Raimi did a good job at implementing his style, the little bits of horror that that he could implement there. The fact that this was pretty gory for being a Marvel film. It is easily the most graphic Marvel film. I do think they could have pushed the boundaries even a little bit further, even though it's a PG-13 film. They honestly didn't show as much as some people were expecting. I thought it was just about on par. There's only one real complaint, and that was with a character's death that I will talk about in the story, and kind of just the visual aspects of everything. But overall, I think Sam Raimi did a great job. I rewatched every single Sam Raimi film going into Multiverse of Madness, and I truly think that helped my viewing experience on both occasions, because I caught things that, really just Marvel fans, people wouldn't have caught if you're just an everyday Marvel fan, or, if you're not a horror fan, if you don't watch Sam Raimi's films, if you're not familiar with Sam Raimi. I mean, just Bruce Campbell in general. I know there's tons of people out there that aren't going to know who that was or why it really was funny. And, I mean, it's because they were, Bruce Campbell's in basically, I think he literally is in every single Sam Raimi film. So, but yeah, I think Sam Raimi did a great job. I know a lot of people have some complaints, but I do think that's mostly with the story. But before we get to that, we have the cast and the characters. So for our cast and our characters, we have Benedict Cumberbatch as our Doctor Strange. We have Elizabeth Olsen as the Scarlet Witch, which, yes, I'm going to say right now, we'll say spoilers. Spoilers now. So if you haven't seen the movie, go away, go watch it. Spoilers now. Spoilers now. Scarlet Witch, she's the villain. It was obvious, but just the fact that they get right to it, I really, 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 really enjoyed. I do not know how to pronounce her name. I think it's Sochi or Sochi Gomez. I can't. Let me know how to pronounce that in the comments below. But she plays America Chavez, which she was fantastic. As for a new character introduction, I have to say America Chavez is my favorite new character that's been introduced in Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe so far. I definitely think, obviously, the standout in this film is Wanda, the Scarlet Witch. Elizabeth Olsen's performances are fantastic with the variants. I actually really did enjoy, oh my gosh, Christine Palmer, I can't remember her name. Mean Girls. Rachel McAdams, there we go. But I actually really enjoyed her performance. I thought her character use was better than in the first Doctor Strange. I honestly, I think this film is miles, like way better than the first Doctor Strange. I did enjoy the first Doctor Strange upon release, but I think that this film is so specifically, honestly, it's kind of just made for me. Like, the cameos aside, the horror aspect is really what made me enjoy this film, and the Raimi cam, everything about it. But the cast and the characters, fantastic. Doctor Strange does get a little bit sidelined. However, I do think his relationship with Christine was cool, and I did like seeing the multiple versions of Strange. But the standout was Wanda, and then the next favorite character for me was America Chavez. I thought she's fantastic. Her storyline was cool, even though they very, very briefly explore it. I'm excited to see where it goes in future films or possibly even TV shows. Okay, and next up we have the story. So here is where I have basically all of my complaints with this film. You have a director who stepped in after a director stepped out, had a conflict with Marvel. And whenever you have a situation like that, whether it be Star Wars with the Solo story, anything, you're going to have issues. And this film does have issues because I know the original cut was supposed to be almost 3 hours long, so you can tell there are definitely certain scenes where certain characters' dialogues, interactions have been cut short, and that does move the film along quicker, but almost in a way that leaves you guessing, leaving like, oh wait, where was something slightly feels missing. And I don't think there's necessarily super important scenes that feel missing. I just think there's probably quite a bit of visual style that was left out. Raimi style that was left out. Is probably some more multiversal travel, because they did show quite a bit again in the trailers. I personally enjoyed the way that the film started. I know some people were complaining about the first 20-30 minutes feeling a little bit rushed, and I can see where that's coming from, but also, again, the first 20-30 minutes isn't something that I necessarily feels necessarily to be told in a longer format. So I had a great time with this film. I didn't think too hard into it. I just had a fun time, and I'm sorry to those that had such high expectations, because I didn't. After Endgame and No Way Home, I've lowered my expectations. Those films were fantastic. They met my expectations. They overexceeded, and this did too, because of the fact that I was just like going in looking to have fun. But yeah, the story definitely has flaws, but I think there are things that I can overlook because I personally love Raimi's style, the cast as a whole, the visuals in the film, even though there are some, like a few shots that are a little bit iffy, but even then I'm just like, okay, this movie's just pure fun, and that's kind of all it's meant to be. And speaking of the visual aspect of the film, we have the cinematography. So overall, I thought the cinematography was really well done. Again, it has Sam Raimi written all over it, especially the later half of this film. You have the Raimi cam going into Wanda's, alternate Wanda's house, and just everything about this film. When Wanda is trying to get into Kamar-Taj to attack and take America, you just have her, reaching through the puddles, and everything like that just felt so Raimified. That's obviously not a word, but it just felt so much like a Sam Raimi film. And movie really, again, like, I'm talking so highly of it, and I'm gonna sound crazy because I know a bunch of people are so divided on it. The Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole, it's not the best story-wise. It's not the most complex, except for a few overarching stories with, Infinity War, Endgame, Iron Man's story, Captain America's story. There's some few really, really good bits, and there's some few really lackluster bits, but you're going to have that just like you do with Star Wars. But overall, I just think for for a franchise that's 28 films in and 6 shows in, this film did more than it needed, and I had a great time with it. And now we are going to talk about the score. So this score was done by Danny Elfman, the legendary Danny Elfman. Everybody knows Danny Elfman. The score is fantastic. I personally really felt it the second time around in the theater. You know, I was taking notes. I had a little sticky notepad, and I was just writing down things that stuck out to me. And the score is one thing that multiple times I had such a fun time with just listening to what was happening. The musical note fight sequence is something that, again, you could not get away with had it been a character not like Doctor Strange, where it's using this already out of this world power and visual style. So that fight scene was fantastic, but again, it's using audible cues and just them going through the multiverse and just everything. Like, I could listen to this soundtrack, and there's not very many. Actually, I would say the only Marvel Cinematic Universe films that I can listen to the soundtrack to just as a soundtrack is this film, Multiverse of Madness, and Spider-Man No Way Home. Maybe Infinity War fits in there too, but I don't see myself actually listening to that score. Whereas this, it's got some eeriness, it's got some excitingness. Like, this is something that I would listen to, honestly, to try and keep myself engaged in a car ride, or to try and just keep myself pumped up. I don't know. Again, I don't listen to soundtracks to films very much, but if I were going to, this would be up there in a soundtrack to film that I would listen to. That's not a thing that I do. So Danny Elfman did a great job. And let's move on to the final thoughts. Again, so you obviously can tell I liked this film. It's probably somewhere in my top 10 MCU films. I will be doing a ranking, so stay tuned for that. I did take a bunch of notes, so with that, again, I like the movie. There's not much other. Well, I guess let's talk about the Illuminati. I didn't talk about that in the story because I could have gone on forever and ever explaining the story. But the Illuminati, you have Reed Richards, John Krasinski, which I like him. I didn't think his performance felt anything like what I would want from Reed Richards. It just felt like John Krasinski in a costume, which again was fine for the little performance that we had. I just hope that if he does end up being the Reed Richards in the 616 MCU, that he actually... I just don't want his performance to be like that. It just felt a little clunky, and that was the case with most of the Illuminati characters. Like Captain Carter's death, I know you couldn't show much because she got cut in half, but that was just a little awkward for me. Captain Marvel's death, I thought they again should have shown more. Black Bolt's death was fantastic. Seeing him in general was cool because I hated the Inhumans, but he is like the perfect casting, and that's probably the only ever time we're ever going to see Black Bolt, so it was cool that we at least got to see him in the MCU once. Obviously, Professor X in the X-Men 97 chair, and again, the Danny Elfman score comes in, recreating the X-Men 97 theme. That was fantastic. The sorry, that was probably loud. But I just had such a fun time with this film. Mordo was fine. Again, this film was fantastic. Let's take a look at some of my notes, though. So as for the Sam Raimi things, I immediately wrote down the very first version of Strange, which ends up being Zombie Strange, gets stabbed in the thigh, and then that immediately starts to almost not dissolve, but turn black, and that's a straight-up reference to The Evil Dead, where the foot kind of turns black. I took like 20 notes, so we're just going to go through these. We have the Gargantos squid monster eye, with one eye. It gets one tentacle cut off, and you can see black blood, and that's because it is a creature being used with dark magic. It's Wanda using her dark magic, so that's like the first bit of foreshadowing in this film for those who might not know that Wanda is the villain. I also wrote that there is a Spider-Man reference to the Spider-Man 1 Spider-Man Sam Raimi film with America Chavez, and as well as So there's a reference to Mary Jane in Spider-Man, Sam Raimi, Spider-Man 1, when Mary Jane is on the ledge for the parade. The ledge gets exploded, the balcony gets exploded, and Mary Jane is kind of sliding off and dangling there. This same type of thing happens to America again in New York. She's on a ledge of a building, and it kind of crackles because of Gargantos, and then you see her, barely hanging on the edge. Again, it could just be a coincidence, but I'm thinking with Sam Raimi's return to superhero films, it's probably a slight reference to Spider-Man 1. Now again, I know a bunch of people had issues with the story and the writing, but there were a few clever bits of writing, like when Doctor Strange goes to visit Wanda and she immediately opens up to talk about Westview. And this is Wanda using Westview as a distraction for the fact that she's actually trying to murder America Chavez. And, it's because she's trying to just be like, look, I did a wrong thing. And we can talk about that, and then you can go on your way, and you'll never know that I'm doing this thing for evil reasons. And, I mean, I get it. She's trying to get to her kids. But she goes straight evil, and I love it. Okay, I found this really, really interesting. If you look at the scene when Doctor Strange and America are traveling through the multiverse and you see them tumbling through a bunch of different universes, there's one universe. After they go through where they're underwater in ocean, you see a taxi drive right across the front of the screen, and on that taxi there's an ad that says Grindhouse releasing. Grindhouse, if you guys don't know, is a combination feature with Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino's films. Put Planet Terror and Death Proof combined in a double feature film. Why is that referenced in a Marvel movie of all things? I'm guessing it's just that Sam Raimi is probably friends with both of those directors. I thought that was really cool, and I noticed it. It felt so cool to find that on my own and not see anybody else point that out. I haven't seen anybody else point that out so far, so it did feel really cool to go see that and then see it again and then find it on YouTube and actually confirm it. Like, it does say Grindhouse releasing, so that's cool. One thing I just found interesting, and I'm excited to see where it goes, is America Chavez says there's no alternate versions of her. That's because she doesn't dream. And so, yeah, don't know if that's actually true. Don't know if there might be a different version of America. I don't think so. I think they will stick with the one version of this character, which will be very important to keep this character alive moving forward if they have to basically correct anything within the multiverse. And then on top of that, she does mention that she's been to 73 universes. We see basically, I think, only 3 of them. Her home universe, the one that she's in with Doctor Strange, and then the core 616. So 838, 616, and then her home universe. So we only see 3 real universes and then the couple that they kind of cycle through. So I'm sure there's probably about 10 total that we see, but out of the 73 that she said, that's a lot of room for exploration. Also, I just had to point out that as Wanda is dreamwalking and they do a cut from one Wanda to a different Wanda in the different universes, the framing is the exact same, but it's just done so well because in both universes, Wanda is talking to Billy and Tommy, but in one of them, they're just not there, and the way that it's cut back and forth is done so well, and I really, really enjoyed that. Also, a fun little nod is Wanda looked at the camera. She does a fourth wall break when she first does her dream walk, and she first connects inside that alternate version of Wanda. I will have to say, one of my complaints was the kids' song that Billy and Tommy did. They said, we love ice cream like every child should. If you give us ice cream, we promise to be good. I get it. It's a cute little fun little note here and there. I will say, I saw this once on premiere night and then once on Mother's Day. And on Mother's Day, literally every single mom in the theater laughed at that. I just found that hilarious because nobody else laughed except the moms, and you could tell that it was the moms. So that was funny. I don't think I would have enjoyed that moment otherwise without the reaction of the crowd. But yeah, that was just, another kind of cheesy Marvel moment. And going back to talking about Reed Richards, Doctor Strange does say, didn't you guys chart in the 60s talking to Reed Richards about the Fantastic Four? That could be a reference to the fact that there might be a musical group called the Fantastic Four in the 60s that Doctor Strange was familiar with, or this could be the first little inkling of the setup of the Fantastic Four, which I think was possibly actually set up all the way back in Ant-Man or Ant-Man and the Wasp with the Quantum Realm City. And there's, I think plenty of people have the theory out now, but I think the Fantastic Four probably was a family group of scientists in the 60s. They got lost in the multiverse, or they got lost in the quantum realm. They built this little city. They do whatever they can to survive, and then somehow get pulled into today's Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's my guess for what's gonna happen. My old roommate, that was her idea. So, also, this was just a visual cue. I liked that when there was the dream walking sequence of Wanda trying to reconnect with the alternate Wanda for the second time. You see the wind being blown through the window and leaves coming in through the room, and then you see dominoes trickle and fall over, and it's like, it's something so unnecessary, but it is a fun little visual cue that does, again, feel very much like Sam Raimi's style. Also, again, another thing that I just didn't like about Reed Richards, the fact that he says, oh, the building's been breached, and then Strange says, oh, no shit, genius. Like, yeah, I get it, it's supposed to be a comedic moment, but yeah, Reed Richards is supposed to be the smartest man alive, so why would he say that? It did feel a little bit too on the nose for me personally. I also like the fact that Mordo and Strange had a one-on-one, hand-to-hand combat. It's not often that you're going to see a wizard have hand-to-hand combat, and I do think it was a nice breath of fresh air, even though this is only the second installment in the Doctor Strange, I guess, franchise, you can call it. But, as from what we've seen so far, this is probably the first real fist fight we've had with Strange. I really liked the tunnel chase sequence where they go under the river in the 838 universe. My whole theater on the premiere night, whenever they stopped and they looked back waiting for something to happen, everybody in the theater was like, go, go, go. And I usually don't have those experiences, so I laughed out loud. I was happy that my theater was so engaged with it, and it really did just make that scene more enjoyable and my whole experience more enjoyable. And then again, you have a jump scare with Wanda. Okay, so camera stopped recording, but again, we have a jump scare with Wanda as she peeks out around the corner and her eyes are bright red. I love that. Again, another just Sam Raimi style jump scare. Again, jump scares alone usually don't work anymore. Overall, there's so many just repeated ways of doing jump scares, and I thought, even though there's some kind of cliche ways of doing jump scares, the fact that it's a Marvel hero gone bad, and it's Sam Raimi behind it, it just feels so fun and does feel new. Another small complaint I had was just Doctor Strange walking up in the Sanctum Sanctorum to see the dark version of Doctor Strange. He walks up this super large staircase with the ocean, waving, and I just thought that sequence was way too drawn out. I loved the fight sequence, but literally just him walking up the stairs, oh my god, it was like 30 seconds of just him going upstairs. Like, cut it out. It could have been 1-2 seconds of him walking up steps, and that's it. I wrote down here, I also loved America's scream. Yes, that's a weird thing to say, but when America gets strapped down on basically Wanda's like little ruin thing, her throne, whatever you call it, America lets out a really, really harsh scream, and it gave me a Final Girl vibe. I would love, honestly, that scream alone. I was like, oh, okay, now I want to see her in a horror film, because she's got the scream that you want to hear in a horror film. That, again, it's such a weird thing to talk about, but she's got a great scream. I loved the high-pitched guitar screeching during the spirits, as well as the very end of the film when Doctor Strange has his third eye open and you just hear the... I know that was awful, but the guitar screeching. So that is all of my notes. I had a fun time. I know this movie's not perfect. I do not think this movie's perfect. I just had such an enjoyable time. I've seen it twice in 3 days, 4 days. So yeah, I really did enjoy this film. I didn't even see Spider-Man No Way Home again in theaters, and that's my favorite MCU film. I've seen it more than once, but I didn't see it in theaters more than once. Regretting that. But this film, again, it was just a fun time. If you haven't seen this film, what are you doing watching this whole spoiler video? But if you haven't seen this film and you made it here, well, hopefully you still have an interest in seeing it. It is a fun time. Don't go into it expecting everything like Deadpool or, just basically every other cameo that you could imagine. I know there was a lot that people expected, but again, just go into it having fun. I had a fun time with it, and I'm honestly way more excited now for the next installment of Doctor Strange than I was for this, because Doctor Strange 1 was not that great in my opinion, and so going into this, the only real hype I had for this was the fact that it was a multiverse story and the fact that Sam Raimi was behind it. Doctor Strange was kind of the side attachment to this for me going into it. But coming out of this film, I had a great time. Let me know what you guys thought of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness in the comments below. I'm Carter Scotland Allen, and I will see you guys in my next movie review.